in her busy day.
Welcome back to Moralton University. Today's topic is a what-if scenario presented in the show but never properly explored. What if Orel had been raised a girl? To be clear, this is not an analysis video or an essay, but a speculative discussion. What this means is we've taken some cues from our analysis of canon and the Puppington family and applied it to the Posabules. You can think of this as a fanfic video if you want. We're just having fun with it. We're also joined by our friend Bree today, so everybody say hi to Bree.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Bree. So, what do we know to be true about the Posabules?
Okay. So here are some things that we know to be true about the Posabules based on things we've observed throughout the show. In the Lord's Prayer, Art called Block their little boy. Clay would never say this about Shapey in a million years.
I'm Art Posabule. This is my wife, Poppit, our little boy Block.
Poppit does not consider Block to be her baby in the same regard that Blabberta considers Shapey to be hers. We see this when she slams the door on him in Numb. Art is shown to be strict and overprotective with Christina. Poppit is just slightly more blissed out than Blabberta in the Lord's Prayer. Christina has internalized more shame about her body than Orel has at the same age. Christina seems more adventurous and knowledgeable about the world. She invites Orel to meet her at Inspiration Point when they are forbidden from seeing each other. Shapey would not go into Clay's study, but Block does at one point and is rebuked by Clay. Block's verbal tics involve more about eating than drinking.
Cake! Yummy!
Block is more physically involved with Clay than Shapey ever was. Block climbs onto Clay to get to his drink, while Shapey screams when Clay touches him. And Block prefers being near Blabberta over Poppit.
All right, so the first episode that the Posabules were featured, and Art introduces his family, Art called Block their little boy. Clay would never ever say this about Shapey in a million years. So what do we think this implies?
Art actually recognizes Block and has some kind of connection to him.
I think it also has to do with the fact that, like, he's like the boy of the family and Christina's a girl. So, of course, he's going to not only have more stake, like, and more stock in him, but he's going to introduce him first.
Yeah, and it's a bragging right almost to have a little boy to introduce. I thought it was interesting that Art calls Block their little boy, like that he's recognizing Poppit's connection to him at all, which, based on what we will discuss about our feelings about Art's personality later, is not, in my opinion, is not him recognizing Poppit as a valued member of creating Block. Well, but more so him trying to be charming, and trying to get other people to believe that.
Well, he's also not going to introduce them by being like, yeah, this is my son Block, and he came from an affair.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Poppit, she doesn't consider Block to be her baby in the same way that Blabberta considers Shapey to be her baby. And like we see that when she slams the door on him in Numb, and
she did not
lets Blabberta take him.
She's winning the I don't give a fuck war.
She didn't want him back, and Block didn't want to go back.
Nope.
I forget, does she close the door like before or in the middle or after he runs to Blabberta? Like, does she see it?
Or it's after, because they're both like hugging her. Slams the door.
We watched him leave at least, so of course I don't think Poppit is like a cruel person. She just doesn't see Block as her son, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I think she's a little cruel.
I think she hates that fucking kid.
Yeah.
I agree. I think she doesn't care what happens.
I think she can be cruel. I mean, let's not sanitize things. Like, she's horrible based on what we've been saying in here, but she's, everybody is also having a degree of suffering in their situation as well. But we'll move on.
Of course.
Yeah.
She looked pissed. She looked pissed when she slammed the door. She looked mad.
Yeah. She doesn't like that kid.
She don't like that kid.
The whole attitude she had there was very different from the one that was shown in Lord's Prayer, which was basically both the Puppingtons and the Posabules showing off like a fake personality. You know what they remind me of? Do you ever, like, for anyone who's seen American Psycho, when all the guys are comparing their business cards?
Yeah, she's like A to Z. You know?
You cannot tell the differences between all of the business cards except for like them pointing out these tiny, minute details.
Is that a gram? New card. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice. Look at that.
Picked them up from the printers yesterday.
Good coloring.
That's bone. And the lettering is something called Cillian Braille.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this.
That is really nice.
Eggshell with Romalian type. What do you think?
Nice. Jesus. That is really super. How did a nitwit like you get so tasteful?
I can't believe that Bryce prefers Van Patten's card to mine.
But wait, you ain't seen nothing yet. Raised lettering, pale nimbus, white.
Impressive. Very nice. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my God. It even has a watermark.
That's the Puffingtons and the Posabules.
Yeah, that literally is.
Please let me make a meme cut in of this with like sliding cleaning supplies on the table.
Yeah.
And fucking, oh my God. Okay. So
And also with Art and Clay with the records, like, I have this one too.
Yeah. And then they're awkward laughing. They were not getting on that well.
I feel a little bit bad for Clay in that scene because, like, of what we've come to understand about how he seems like a guy who has never really had a friend before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both of them were probably, at least a little bit, genuinely, I would say they would probably like the prospect of having, like, a friend that would be, you know, similar to them, but they're not really as similar as I guess they seemed they were.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like part of the anger on both of their parts. It's not just, oh, I let this person who I think is so different from me into my home, but I thought you were my friend.
Yeah, maybe so.
I thought we were in heaven.
No, now we can't listen to records in heaven together, you bastard.
Art is shown to be overprotective with Christina and very strict with her.
Which I'd say is very, like, typical of the head of the household. Like,
it's not unrealistic.
Christian father.
Yeah, definitely not.
Especially
she's
to a
both like
daughter.
Exactly.
Yeah, specifically to the daughter.
A girl in this position is both something that's like beautiful and needs to be protected and is very delicate. Something I've heard a lot from people in evangelical circles as a child. Somebody came to their youth group to sit them down and pass around a flower, and you know, by the time the flower got back to the speaker, they'd be like, look, all your handprints are on it. The petals are crumbled and ruined. Now imagine that petal is you. Would you give this flower to your husband on your wedding night? Girls are compared to flowers, a tube of toothpaste, a chocolate bar, etc.
Tube of toothpaste?
Yeah, because you can't put it back in once it's been squeezed out. But
oh my God, stop!
Yes, I know. But the reason I bring it up is because girls are both a dainty thing that needs to be protected and a burden.
Another thing that we observed is that Poppit is just a little bit more blissed out than Blabberta. She's a little, like, she's took some mommy's little helpers.
When she first comes in, she's kind of got this look on her face.
But I think from a background production standpoint, because, you know, Blabberta they had plans for Blabberta's story, they just didn't get to really explore it because of the show's cancellation. So they had even less material for who is Blabberta's counterpart in the episode.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, a lot of the characters were still just like more Flanderized at that point as well. So
yeah,
like, of course, the only thing they're all talking about is like fucking drinking alone in the little like man cave and then fucking cleaning.
Also, like, with the cleaning supplies thing where Blabberta like immediately like goes off the handle, like Poppit is like slower to react, and she's also the one who switches it back and is like, all better.
Thank you, Poppit.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like because I'm so aware of the headcanon that rewatching the episode I see Poppit in that light. But I felt like the way Britta delivers that line, like Poppit's lines are also like kind of more spacey than the way.
So there's a thing about
her voice is so obnoxious too.
The voices of Art and Poppit, you know, they're the same voice actors, of course. It's like Scott as both Clay and Art, and Britta as both Poppit and Blabberta.
Can't believe you would expose my children to this without my consent. Your children? What about my kid? He's only 9.
12. Please, just leave. Gladly.
But Art and Poppit sound like a more masculine version of Clay and a more feminine version of Blabberta. Blaberta's voice is coming from like lower down than Poppit's voice.
Yeah.
Poppit's voice is like from higher up in her head.
Poppit has the baby Fundie voice. So, yes, and we're going to get a little bit more into that with the video about the women in Moralton, but just to give a quick rundown for anyone who doesn't know what that is, in a lot of communities, especially evangelical fundamentalist communities, women are they're trained from early childhood to speak in a very like, hi guys, this is Moralton University, and here we're going to be talking to you guys about the posabules. So they don't sound like intelligent or confrontational.
And then I went back on the pill. And I ended up getting pregnant while on the pill. And we ended up losing that baby. And that was very...
Well, President Biden proudly proclaims that Bidenomics is working.
Good idea. I don't know why. I always put mine in chronological order.
Yes, this is new.
Oh, but you've got Never Filth and Murder Dirt switched.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's non-threatening.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
With Art's voice, like it's more of a chest voice.
Yeah, he sounds like very boisterous.
Good evening. It certainly is. I have this. And this. Hey, and this. Oh, no. Non-threatening Negro Comedy Volume 6.
Yeah, he sounds like he'd like walk around with his chest puffed out.
Yeah, he's like a peacock, but not the fun kind that
he manspreads on purpose.
Yeah. Yep. He does.
Oh no!
What?
That was his tone. That was.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So one of the other things that we noticed, Christina has internalized more shame about her body than Orel has at the same age, and I'm sure a lot of this has to do with her being like, obviously she's a girl. That's like one of the main things that's going to be brought up for a growing girl in a society like this.
I think it kind of seeps into the next point, which is that Christina seems like more knowledgeable about the world than Orel does. Like, she invited him to Inspiration Point, like, because they weren't allowed to see each other, and so she would have to know kind of what Inspiration Point is. And with her like covering herself and being like, don't look at me like that, I think that kind of, you know, meshes with that, and the whole like, she understands more of the subtext of the situation than he does.
At the same time, like, I've always looked at that scene through a very sad light, because it is, but there's almost something sweet in the fact that she was willing to say that to Orel and speak up against him at all, because she's not talking to Art like that.
Yeah.
And there was this, you know, Orel isn't like other boys to her. She probably had horrible things said to her, not just by her father, but like the other boys in town and at school, where she, you know, where she moves to and where she was from. But she expects Orel to be respectful to her.
So another thing that we noticed is that Shapey never goes into Clay's study, but Block does. Like, he runs in at one point, like knocks a bunch of shit over, and then like Clay like swats him away. And we think it's interesting that Block felt comfortable enough to do that, whereas Shapey never would.
Art is with and Block's possible relationship is interesting because he's not putting in the proper care that a child that age needs. We see from the fact that Block acts in the same way that the neglected Shapey does. So he's probably bringing him into his study and talking to him about what it means to be a man, and showing him whatever, if he's also a hunter or something, showing him all the animals that I believe he actually did kill. But he's not
Take
like
your son to work day.
Yeah, exactly. He's taking him to his work, but he's not having basic conversations about with him. Like, if you want to eat or drink something, say, Daddy, or can I have this, please, Mommy?
I was just gonna say, like, if he ever took him to work with him, I feel like all his little secretaries like fawn over him, and that kind of makes him more naughty.
Wait, no, that actually makes sense. And that might explain why he latches on to Blur, besides the fact that she was helping to, you know, she was being his mother for a few weeks. He's used to women who aren't his mother fawning and doting on him. Ellie, please.
So since we've gone over what we know to be true about them, which is very little, let's go over what we can kind of extrapolate from that. Starting with Art Posabule.
And extrapolate we have.
And to clarify, we're not just extrapolating based solely off this information. We're also kind of taking into account like these little differences.
We try to make them similar to the Poppitons in some ways, different to the other.
Parallel, but not, yeah.
Exactly. We take some of Clay's experience for Poppit, and we take some of Blaberta's for Art's, but of course we're not saying that, because you're going to see that Art is a lot crueler of a character than any of the other of the 4 adults. We're not saying that Blabberta is like that, for example.
We feel that Christina's home life is just way more terrible than Orel's.
Yeah.
Basically because Christina doesn't have any photos of them in the living room when in the epilogue of Honor. So that's kind of interesting to read into.
Yeah, so realize that as a viewer that this is not a one-to-one, like, oh, like Poppit is the like clay parallel and Blabberta is the art parallel. It's just there's little things from each of them that coincide and they form their own narrative through that.
Yeah, and I think we've taken a lot of influence from things we know about Fundie culture and things that were kind of common among like 50s like heterosexual couples. There's some influence there, and also we just want to say, like, if you don't agree with our takes, that's okay. We'd love to hear your opinions. Just be respectful. This is all speculation. It's okay to disagree, have your own opinion.
We do plan on sharing some of the things that you guys commented when we asked about what you would like to see in a Posabule video.
All right. So if Art is openly affectionate with Block and calls him his son, and he's not resentful towards him, but Poppit has no regard towards Block, as we see in Numb, it follows that Block is the result of Art's philandering rather than Poppit's, and it's a reverse of the Puppington situation.
Yeah, and like I think this makes so much more sense than Poppit being the one to cheat.
Art would not. She would be out on the street with that bastard. I don't think Block is a bastard, but you know what I mean.
Art is a bit of like a Don Draper type, where he's like very masculine, like take charge, and like is very sexual and has a lot of like affairs.
You're for them, not us.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but there is no big lie. There is no system. The universe is indifferent.
Am I right, buddy?
Let's take it a little slower. I don't want to wake up pregnant.
And of course they're evangelical, so they wouldn't believe in evolution, but a lot of men do use that excuse where it's like that, I'm hardwired to get as many women pregnant as possible. If he did believe in evolution, I feel like he would say something like that, or he would just say that God made them that way.
He considers himself an alpha male.
If the idea of a woman being holy, if she accepts her husband's affair child, is so common within evangelical circles that I hear a new story about it like every week. It's crazy.
I mean, it follows that Poppit would have been aware from day one, like without a doubt, Block is not her baby. And like it would have been that someone, like they pressured her to adopt him.
Yeah, exactly. Because, of course, it's not the kind of thing that would be able to stay within the family, because they would see that she was never pregnant. And I forget what it's called. Some women have a thing with their uterus where it gets tilted and they don't show, but I don't think that they wouldn't be like, oh, it's this very rare situation.
I don't think that people in those communities know what the fuck that is.
Yeah, exactly.
But I get what you're saying. Why are you stopping?
Sorry. I zoned out for a second.
Okay. Art's possessiveness of Christina can be read as indicative of him protecting her purity. Fundamentalist men will often consider daughters to be more burdensome for this reason and usually favor their sons.
And of course, Art is very enthusiastic about adopting, quote unquote, it came from his illegitimate son because Poppit hadn't given him a son at that point. And we can assume that Christina and Block have the same age gap between them as Orel and Shapey do. So for an evangelical man, that's a long time to wait to get a son.
Yeah.
Because Block is like the heir to his name, and Christina's just like this. Someday the idea is that Christina will get married to a man that he approves of, and then Christina will be his problem.
Yeah, that's just the view of it, isn't it? That, a girl is your problem until she's somebody else's problem.
Exactly. And the ideal is that the husband that Christina eventually marries will come from a family that's maybe influential or really good Christians. So Art can say, my daughter is married into the so-and-so family. Bro thinks he's fucking Genghis Khan. Because we have the idea of him being more authentically masculine, like in the way that Clay seems to be.
But Clay fails at it a lot. Whereas Art, he might... I feel that if Art went hunting, he'd be good at it.
Yeah, if he has the same animal heads in his studies, he genuinely has gone and killed all those animals, which is interesting because if Posabules are in a similar situation with the Puppingtons where they're not poor or anything, but you're not super wealthy either. Art may be like commandeering a lot of the family's finances to go on these trips and kill these exotic animals.
And you know what? He probably has friends who go on those trips with him.
Yeah. Another thing Clay doesn't have.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it would correlate with him like being more possessive and like sexually aggressive, like outside the home as well. So, you know, like when he's, you know, looking through Clay's music, he's like going through everything and picking stuff up and going, oh, I have this. He's basically commandeering the conversation.
And Clay just goes with it. Like,
in this kind of invasive sort of way.
There's
like taking charge.
A natural leader and follower dynamic there.
Wait, it's a beta male.
Oh my god, wait, so, and just gonna bring this up now before I forget, but it's the opposite with Poppit and Ballerina. Poppit's just kind of riding it out.
Yeah.
And Ballerina is like, oh, look at this. This is my cleaning product. And obviously she's being more welcoming and nicer than Art is with Clay. But it's just interesting that like Poppit's
also,
more docile of the two in that situation.
Sorry, go ahead, Ellie.
Something that we noted, and this is a little further down in our notes, is that Art and Ballerina both wear red, which is a color that's associated with passion and aggression and sexuality. So we think that kind of sets them up as like a parallel of being like the more dominant partner, the one who more aggressively pursued the other person in the beginning. So we think that, you know, Art and Ballerina are not like...
And of course, they're not dominant in the same way.
Like, they're not on like the same level of awful, but they do have that more like dominant.
It's like that's the partner who initiated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it, I think.
Something that we said made me think of with Clay and Art. Clay is going along with what Art says, but Poppit and Ballerina are sharing with each other. You know, Ballerina has one way of organizing her cleaning supplies, which we'll talk about, and Poppit has another. Both are very valid. Like, they're excited to learn new things about a passion that at least Ballerina believes they both share, whereas Clay is just coming into Art's world.
Okay, so speaking of Art wearing the pants, so to speak, speaking of which, like, they probably don't fall. Like, maybe they fit him perfectly.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Like, that would be an interesting visual way to say that.
Like, for him, a belt is just an accessory.
Yeah, like, he has a belt on, and he has a different one that he spanks Christina with.
Yeah.
Also, he doesn't get a fun flamboyant robe because he already wears red.
Yeah. He doesn't want to seem relaxed to his family at all.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay, so parallels. If Clay is a masochist, then Art is a sadist.
I think with Art being a sadist, for me, like, the distinction there is that, like, when Clay goes around, like, and interacts with people and he's a dick, he's looking to be punished. And we see that in Sacrifice very plainly.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to be punished by these people. And then I think with Art, for him, it's like, I think he takes pleasure in stepping on other people. When he goes out and he's a dick for people, it's for that feeling.
It's to be a bully.
Yeah, he wants to see their reactions, because being able to get a rise out of somebody, he's making them emotionally hurt.
Yeah.
And there's also other parallels that we've come up with their psychology, because, you know, we have the idea that Clay and Ballerina both have borderline personality disorder. If Clay is primarily BP with some narcissistic traits, Art would be primarily NPD with some borderline traits. And of course, that isn't because of how fucked up we imagine Art to be. That's not demonizing people with NPD or anything. Since we also believe Ballerina to have BPD, we believe that Poppit has NPD as well. So we know with Clay where his masochism came from, with his father telling him that he wasn't worth it. And of course, we see Clay's childhood. He was the youngest kid, or technically the youngest kid. I know that we believe that Art was probably the oldest or the middle child, but how do you guys see that his sadism may have come about?
I mean, older children, like, the thing with, like, Clay getting really jealous about his mom having potential siblings, that's very much an older child kind of thing, that, like, the firstborn child really dislikes the younger children. It's something that I've heard called the Cain instinct.
That is interesting.
That when I'm an oldest child, but my little brother was born, I was like, when can he go back?
Yeah,
that's exactly what people say. That's what little kids say. Yeah,
I'm the oldest as well. With my little sister, I was excited, but that's because I wasn't living with her So when I did finally start living with her, that's when the Cain instinct came in.
Yeah. It's just like an instinctive hatred of having to, share parental love.
Yeah, I think Art is a very entitled person in general. So he would probably feel the same way with Christina and Poppit and Block, that because he provides for them, he takes care of them, or with his siblings, because he's teaching them and mentoring them like an older brother should, that he gets to enact his wrath on them in any way that he pleases.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I can hit you because Mom told me I had to teach you how to tie your shoes and you're not doing it right, so I'm allowed to hit you.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is something that... So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't want to make this about Succession, but I'm just thinking right now, like, Art is very much giving me, like, Kendall screaming, I'm the eldest boy.
It doesn't even make any sense! I'm the eldest boy!
To justify why he should have the company, and, like, Kendall's not even the eldest boy, actually. He just thinks he is because the older brother is, like, only a half-sibling, and everyone thinks he's useless, and I think it would be interesting if maybe Art did have an older sibling that, like, for one reason or another wasn't counted as being, like, serious or whatever.
Oh.
And Art just sees himself as, like
that.
This, entitled, better one, and, like... Sorry, not to make everything about Succession, but adding Kendall Roy energy.
That does make... I mean, I've never seen the show, but from what you've described there, that does make a lot of sense. And, despite the fact that Art sees his family and his possible younger or maybe even older siblings as a burden, he's happy to take part in the privileges that gives him. And since Clay hates his job, Art probably does enjoy whatever job that he has.
Like, I firmly believe that Art is, like, the inverse of Clay, where he's like a complete workaholic. He delights in going to work, and he loves the power he has at work, and he loves like I feel like it's like one of those jobs where he gets to hurt people for a living, and he just loves it. Like being, and like working at an insurance agency where he can deny people coverage.
Yeah,
or, like,
I was thinking that.
Getting people evicted, or just one of those evil jobs.
We got to get Luigi in there.
I just said the same thing. We need Luigi. Get him in.
This is a little silly, but when you said he has a job where he gets to hurt people, have you guys watched those videos of chiropractors on the internet?
No one ever go to a chiropractor.
Yeah,
the ones that especially make my blood boil is when they do it on animals.
Yes, they do it on animals, and they do it on newborn babies. What are you adjusting, bro? Their bones are jello. And because think about it for
the way you said it.
Sorry, I have like a real beef with chiropractors. It's one of my things. But if you think about it for a second, with chiropractors, they are not real medical professionals. There is a origin of evangelicalism in there because the person who invented chiropractic, he told people that a ghost gave him the information. This is real and verifiable. So Art would be able to have a position where he can hurt people, and people think that he's helping them. And he doesn't even have to go to medical school. He doesn't have to do any real work.
I think that's interesting, but I also don't think he'd have a job where he's like hands-on with people like that.
Yeah,
I think
it's more about the psychological torture.
Yeah, I think he'd enjoy being like some kind of like high up like executive sort of thing. Like
the insurance. We gotta get him in a saw trap.
Like something where he feels like important. Like he has power and he can control other people, and he's got all his little worker bees who are doing the tasks he assigns. Like I think he would really get off on that.
He's into insider trading.
Oh god, yeah. And of course another plus with the job is he doesn't have to see his kids. He would have, I think, because he quote unquote cares about Block so much, he would have noticed that he'd been replaced if he was there.
Yeah.
And of course,
and likely, he's out there with his secretaries, just doing whatever he wants.
He has multiple for no reason besides the fact that he wants. Oh yeah, okay. So, you might recall from our Clay video that we believe that he has like a kind of like one-sided homoerotic thing going on with Ken Awkwarding, who, that
wasn't the Clay video. That was the
video.
Oh, sorry. Our queer representation video. Yeah. So one of Art's favorite secretary is named Barbie Kendall, and she is just Ken Awkwarding in a wig.
Wait, you mean like the design is just Ken Awkwarding in a wig, or Ken Awkwarding is going between?
No, the design is Ken Awkwarding in a wig, and
gotcha.
Art has bought his secretary. This is just my headcanon that Art has purchased for his secretaries the most egregious boob jobs you've ever seen.
Oh,
God.
God. They've got to wear skirts a certain length too. Ew, I want to die.
They're all redheads. Every single one.
Oh, ew.
The hell that we've created.
So,
we talked about the red.
Now, Art, he's likely to be socially adept, charismatic, generous, and he might like really come across as a generally likable person in a way that Clay just does not come off as likable. He can also be like manipulative, possessive, and calculating. He's a lot smarter than Clay.
Yeah. Like Clay just goes out into the world as like a little bitch baby, but like Art actually knows how to like work people, and he's very fun to probably like really fun to be around, really nice to talk to. But like it's not authentic. He just like really wants to like get his like hooks into people. Where it's like Clay is a little bitch baby, but he's also that's kind of like genuine.
Clay, he's like he spills too much, like almost like because his social. He's not like socially adept, right? So like he tends to like
overshares.
Yes, thank you. He tends to overshare a lot, but like the opposite is like with like Art, he's very charismatic, but he's constantly whining you, like he's not talking genuinely at all. So it's like that's how they differ in that way.
Yeah, and so going on that, I think the way he approaches people is he likes to feel like he possesses them and owns them and has some kind of like level of like ownership over them. And that's why I think like Poppit is like a trophy to him. I think that Poppit was someone that was not just like the kind of person you'd imagine Art being like in an evangelical community would marry. I think she was harder to get, someone who's like a bit different than him, and feels like he tamed her and he like made her like his submissive housewife.
There's a good quote about this from the comedian Trevor Noah. We have a quote in the script, but it's not the full thing. The way my mother always explained it, the traditional man wants a woman to be subservient, but he never falls in love with subservient women. He's attracted to independent women. He's like an exotic bird collector, she said. He only wants a woman who is free because his dream is to put her in a cage.
So we think that's kind of the dynamic that he has with Poppit.
Sorry, I remember what I was going to say. There is this concept within evangelical communities. It's often the oldest, or one of the older, if not the oldest daughters. It's called a stay-at-home daughter, and they're the ones who are expected to, stay home and take care of the parents forever while the other 25 children get married. So it's like that Poppit could have had that, but it still would have sucked because being a housewife isn't what she wants in any capacity, whether she's someone's wife or not.
Yeah.
Maybe Art might have honestly brought up the stay-at-home daughter concept during their courting and is like, with me. Maybe he made some promises to her that she wouldn't have to do that. It's like there's a tactic of lying where you lie to someone by telling them the truth, quote unquote. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's disturbing.
Yes,
you won't have to do that ever again if you're with me.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we think that it's likely that he uses like a lot of kind of like tactics to pressure her into a relationship with him. Like I don't know if like love bombing. And I don't know if anyone like read the Ballerina Farms article when it came out.
Okay, it's my birthday present from Danielle. Hoping their tickets to Greece. A hat I can wear in Greece.
It's not a hat.
It's not. Oh, my A-game friend!
The fake smile says it all. Her wealthy husband is the son of the owner of JetBlue Airlines, so he definitely could have made some arrangements to get her the tickets to Greece, just like how he pulled strings to sit next to Hannah on her flight back to college, calling it their first date after she had been ducking him for months.
And like Ballerina Farms, like, like she's very much like complicit in her own thing and like what she is today. And like, I'm not being like, oh, like poor woman. She's very much what she is. But in the article, I thought it was very sad when she talked about how she and her husband met, and he's like the son of like airline executive or something, and
his father owns the airline.
And he kind of like cornered her into dating him, and like the inciting incident for that was like he like arranged for them to have seats next to each other on a plane. And so she was stuck next to him for like an entire flight, and that he just kind of like wore her down. And I don't think Art has the tools to do something that extreme, but I think it's that similar kind of tactic that he'd use.
He uses the fact that, besides that he's sending her all these gifts, the fact that people in the church community would want her to get married and would want them to be together. So he probably proposed maybe inside the church because she has all these eyes on her. It's for her to cave in and peer pressure her and saying yes. For those of you who don't know who Ballerina Farms is, by the way, you've probably heard of the incident, the famous video of the woman who, her husband is incredibly rich, and she took a video of her opening their anniversary gift, and she says, "Oh, are these the tickets to Greece I wanted? Remember, his father owns an airline," and she opens it up, and it's a apron for you to put eggs in.
Oh my god, yeah.
I remember that. It was so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go into his relationship with his kids a little bit more.
Okay, so he would know exactly how to show Christina and Block enough kindness to make himself seem like the good parent.
That parental alienation.
Yeah. Like he gives his kids like crumbs of things to make them feel like, oh, he really loves us. So like while he's like demonizing Poppit, who like he's painting as like an unreliable parent, a dangerous parent, just, not a good mother, like he's also doing things like he plays with the kids outside and he signs them up for extracurriculars and maybe brings them there, and he gives them little bits of praise like when they really need it. And so in like juxtaposes himself with Poppit as like being like this supportive parent, the one who's going to be there for you.
Exactly. What I think was really interesting when you guys brought that idea up, if I recall correctly, in the scene where Art puts the for sale sign in the front yard, Christina's also doing the playing catch with God thing, which I don't think goes against your theory. I think it actually adds to it, because Art is really only doing those things enough to get the kids to believe that the relationship is different than it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's an inconvenience to him, Christina, go play by yourself.
Yeah.
And they were, probably also packing up. So
yeah, exactly.
I think that's also it.
Just get out of the way is what you said.
Something else that we think that would happen in Art's relationship with Christina is that like once Christina starts to go through puberty, so like she gets her period and she, needs to go buy her first bra and stuff like that, is that Art's attitude towards her changes pretty dramatically. He's like withholding affection. He becomes more controlling. He doesn't spank her anymore because that wouldn't be like appropriate, but he becomes more like psychologically, like emotionally abusive towards her.
Oh gosh. It's such a lot of girls, whether evangelical or not, go through something similar where you feel like one day your father just sees you like a stranger for something that you have no control over.
Yeah, but like I think with Art, it's like once Christina hits puberty, it's like, oh, she's not like my little girl anymore. Now she's a woman, and that means she gets treated like any other woman.
Ooh, yeah. I think it would have been so powerful if this, is the route that they went, it would have been so powerful to see it in action, because, it's one of those things where if Christina ever had the gall to like call him out about it, like, Dad, why are you treating me different? Why don't you do this with me anymore? Art would of course gaslight her about it, and you may act like she's the weird one for thinking that anything's changed.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know like how much they would have wanted to go into the posabules, or if they would have wanted it to be something sort of like on the periphery.
Yeah, probably not, but I would have liked to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. He probably disowned Christina when she became engaged to Orel.
Yes, exactly. Which is interesting because, he, for so long, he probably thought about the day that he doesn't, after puberty, where he doesn't have to deal with her anymore, but it's not in the way that he wants.
Yeah.
Exactly. Orel isn't a man who will respect Art's authority as his father-in-law. Clay, along with the fact that Clay and...
So our last point in our calculation about Art before we move on to Poppit, and this will kind of link them together, is we think it's likely that Art and Poppit got married later than Clay and Blabberta did. This was something I came up with and speculated. I think that it's very probable that, while Clay and Blabberta got married in their early 20s, I think Art and Poppit probably got married in their late 20s, and then Christina was conceived very shortly after that, whereas we think it took a few years for Orel to be conceived. And this is just because, going back to Art being the more sexually aggressive one, him being a man, he would I think, be a lot more demanding about wanting sex from Poppit and, you need to give me a baby and we need to,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just think it would be a lot more forceful.
We know it took years for Clay and Blabberta to conceive Orel. Like, if you look at the Putty's hair timeline of when they first got married to when the Latchkeys were first dating each other, it was like a dramatic shift of how much hair Putty had. So I think it was several years between those incidents. So the names Clay and Poppit imply malleability. You shape a lump of clay and you play with or you control a doll. And this implies that both these characters have been shaped or controlled to fit into a predetermined role, such as being in a heterosexual marriage.
Oh, and just to clarify for the viewers, Poppit is like a type of doll?
A Poppit isn't just a type of doll. It's like, I think it's a voodoo thing.
One moment.
Oh, I thought it was just a play on puppet.
No,
I didn't know it was like a...
Oh, it has multiple
small figure of human being used in sorcery or witchcraft.
Oh, with an E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Apparently, Poppit with an E and Poppit with an I are different things. A Poppit with an I is usually a plastic bead that can be connected to or detached from others of the same kind without hooks or clasps. There's something there, I just can't think of it right now.
Yeah, Poppit is also like a way to call like a young girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like eternally infantilized.
Yes. Yeah. Wow.
And I wanted to
there's a lot of meaning behind that name.
Yeah.
Someone's first instinct might be to say, Art and Blabberta, of course, are also in this same theme. Everyone has stop motion animation names. What I found interesting was it goes back to our point about the color associations. Clay and Blabberta are synonyms of each other, and I feel like this goes towards their sort of codependency, and it's easier for them to, despite how miserable they are, it is definitely easier for them to coexist. Whereas Art is this very broad, all-encompassing thing, and Poppit is a small thing with a very specific purpose, which I feel goes towards the controlling nature of their relationship.
Yeah,
Art isn't just an aspect within the medium. He's the whole thing. It's kind of ironic, I guess, for lack of a better word, in like a morbid way, because art is often a form of escapism for some people, and we theorize that Poppit has her own form of escapism.
Yeah, we think that it's likely Poppit has a pretty major substance abuse problem, which is more of a mirror to Clay's alcoholism, and like kind of like also fits a little bit with Blabberta's like brief time-taking painkillers. I can't remember the name of it, but
Sensitab, yeah.
But yeah, we think Poppit has a pretty serious issue with substance abuse, like specifically psychiatric drugs that she's been prescribed. So we think that she's probably on some combination of benzos and amphetamines, like depending on what the day demands of her, how she's feeling. So she's just on like this up and down roller coaster, which makes her very unstable.
And it's a very common... I haven't necessarily personally done research into the fact, so I don't know how widespread it was, but it's a very common trope of women from the era. Because, with psychiatric practices in medicine, it was seen as sort of like a catch-all. Like, if your wife isn't doing this, just throw these at her and she'll be all better. I guess the nicer thing before the lobotomy.
I mean, it was also around the same time period, and it was like a whole thing. I mean, like, the Rolling Stones have a song called Mother's Little Helper, which is about that. It was like a whole thing, like, that was well-known culturally.
So, bringing up that song, this is relevant, I promise. I'm not going on a off thing. If you look at the lyrics, there's some certain lines in it, one second, where it sounds like the singer is, like, kind of bitterly criticized, which, of course, we're talking about a woman who's abusing substances while she's taking care of children and stuff like that. But there's a few lines that I've always interpreted as really bitter and mean to the woman in question. Like, he sarcastically says cooking fresh food for her husband's just a drag and stuff. So she buys an instant cake and she burns a frozen steak and goes running for the shelter of her mother's little helper. I feel like that would kind of be a little bit of Art's feelings about it.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he has some sort of resentment of the fact that she needs an escape.
Also talks about like the kind of monotony of like being a housewife of that era and how there's
exactly
really not anything for you and it's just, oh, here's how I can escape. I think it's a mix of both.
And it's an interesting song for Poppit specific because besides the two things that we just mentioned, it seems like the woman in the song isn't like necessarily because she doesn't enjoy this life, so she's not particularly good at the housewife things, which goes into the idea that we have that Poppit just it comes natural to Blibberta, or she learns to enjoy it, whichever way you want to go with that. But Poppit's never come to form any kind of relationship with it, aside from a negative one.
She just like goes through the motions.
Yes, exactly. With Poppit's substance abuse, how much do you guys believe she's aware of?
Like what do you mean? Like, is she lucid?
Well, I think she's aware that, Block is most certainly not her child.
Really? I wonder how she came to that conclusion. That's crazy. She's hysterical.
Harder to gaslight when the baby comes from outside the house.
He was just high as a kite those 9 months.
Yeah. And God can do anything.
Look, God left this baby on our doorstep. Let's raise it. Oh my God, look, it's a boy.
Well,
immaculate conception.
Jokes aside, Poppit, like, from day one, would have been aware of the identity of Block's birth mother, and the affair that she would have with her would not just be emotional, like Clay's affair, but also physical.
And I think it's
probably the reason that Art made them move to Moralton.
Yeah, I think her affair is primarily physical. Like, I don't think she has that emotional connection.
I was about to say,
I think it's, yeah.
I find it really interesting that I agree 100%. I find it a really interesting subversion of things because I feel like with Danielle, people would usually write the man who's doing all this crazy shit to get a person as really only wanting that person and being very physical and libido driven and not wanting the family. But it's like switched like that, which I think goes really well with the story because there are so many expectations of womanhood put on Poppit. So you think, and there's not like this magical fairy tale affair where this woman comes in and makes cures for mental illness.
Yeah, one of the things I had considered because the fact that, Danielle, like, yes, he's really not, he has a dangerous aura to him, but like, at the end of the day, he at least wanted to, like, his plan was to form some sort of family unit. So the way I imagined, like, the Poppit's, like, version of Danielle was like that she had no interest of like keeping Block or any of the kids. She just cared about Poppit.
Yeah. Like, I think it was very much like a lust-driven thing. Really, she just doesn't have any interest in commitment.
I want to put a pin in that thing you said about the kids until later, because I want to hear later your ideas for what maybe Jolene might have...
So, yeah, and by the way, the name we've come up with her, like, in personal conversations is Jolene. You don't have to agree with that name. It's just one we've used in personal conversations. Yeah. So if it slips in here, that's who we're talking about.
Exactly. Later, I want to discuss some ideas for what Jolene maybe would have done with Block and Christina had she gotten what she wanted. So in the show, we see that Blibberta, she loves to sing. She's not considered to be very good at it. And Orel has his hobby is animation, which is a visual art. So our thought process is that Poppit is into painting and is not very good at it, or is considered to not be very good at it. And Christina plays an instrument, which is a musical talent. So it's kind of swapped like that. We believe that Christina plays the tuba.
Yeah. Mostly because it's just funny that, like, a tuba is, like, almost as big as she is.
I know, right?
Yeah, and it's, like, kind of subversive because it's, like, a young girl like herself, like, wouldn't be expected to play an instrument like that. She'd be expected to play something cutesy and, like, like...
a flute or like
chinky, like a triangle, or like a clarinet or a flute.
Moralton University, fun fact. When I was attending, we were all alumni of Moralton University ourselves. I was in the Christian band and I was put on the triangle. One song, I played one note the entire time and I missed it.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Anyways, first off, I need Christina to play a brown note and make Art shit his pants. Second off, I think it's interesting because to go into how Poppit is not considered to be traditionally good at painting, we believe that contrary to her very mellowed out affect from the pills, that her paintings are very bright and garish, which I think is interesting because it kind of matches Christina's whole like tuba thing. Because a proper Moralton woman, if she painted at all, they'd be very soft and beautiful, pastoral views of Jesus playing with lambs. But both of the women are expressing themselves in very loud ways, whether visually or auditorily loud.
I think that Poppit is like more aware of her sexuality than Clay is.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And that causes her a lot of pain in like different ways than it does with Clay.
She'd probably have to repress it much harder because it's like at the forefront of her mind most of the time.
Yeah.
And because, Moralton doesn't really facilitate female friendships or relationships in general, it would be harder to have that excuse of, like, fraternity and camaraderie like the guys might have.
I mean, she was trying to be friends with Ballerina.
Yeah, I know. She was, like, paying attention to, like, the smallest gestures, like, please. It is interesting because if you think about it like that, with Clay and Art and Poppit and Ballerina, both of them are they're trying to be seen by somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Clay, like, what kind of interests me about the idea of, like, reversing the whole role situation of, like, the Puppingtons into the Posabules, because, we can think about how Christina is raised as a Christian girl as opposed to Orel being raised as a Christian boy. But we can also think about how, what does a closeted mixed orientation marriage look like if it's the woman who same-sex attracted and it's the man who's opposite sex attracted, as opposed to like what's going on in the Puppington home. So, Clay, being the breadwinner and being in charge of the finances of the home, like he says he doesn't like sleeping with Ballerina, and he was very vehement about that. And you can see that, he can just put up a barrier between his bed and Ballerina's, and he can pay for 2 beds. He can pay for the lust guard.
I believe
upgrade the lust guard over and over.
Yeah, I was about to say, I believe in before he very explicitly says, like, I should have gotten you sooner, which is vague, but I think to me that's a decent enough confirmation that he was, the one who went out and got them.
Yeah.
And of course, Poppit,
she's not out there making money, and Art's not going to give her money to buy one of those. So, she wouldn't have, like, the power to put up a barrier in the bedroom. So likely they do only have the one bed.
Not now, Orel.
It's Ballerina.
Just a minute. Okay.
Just look at Orel's shirt.
But talking about money, I realized that Clay gives Ballerina a allowance for cleaning supplies and maybe some other stuff we don't know.
I'll have to double my detergent budget.
What? This is serious.
I assume her yarn and her hobby supplies, but I don't think Poppit would get any kind of allowance for that.
Yeah.
Because Art is like, you don't leave the house. What do you need money for? And, it's kind of fucked up because of how hard they drill in, be fruitful and multiply. Your whole purpose in life is to get married and have children. And despite how desperate Art is to have that sexual control over Poppit, it's probably very likely that after Christina's birth, he lost interest in her. But they still probably sleep in the same bed because it's a form of control.
Yeah. It's more about the idea of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the fact that she's available to him and he can at any point that he wants.
I mean, I've heard that in situations like that, sometimes mothers will just, like, go and fall asleep in their kids' bedrooms or something.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that too.
I wouldn't put it past Poppit if she had, like, sleepwalking issues.
That's interesting. I could see that too. That'd probably be pretty scary. I mean, both for her, because on a day-to-day basis, she's not lucid, but she's still there in her body. Like, she understands that she's doing things, but it's even scarier at night when she has no control of her body whatsoever, and she doesn't know or some people sleep talk too, what she could be saying.
Yeah. Fuck, I'm thinking about the scene from Hereditary now.
I never wanted to be your mother.
Why?
I was scared. I didn't feel like a mother. But she pressured me.
Then why did you have me?
It wasn't my fault. I tried to stop it.
How?
I tried to have a miscarriage.
How?
However I could. I did everything they told me not to do, but it didn't work. I'm happy it didn't work.
You tried to kill me.
I love you.
Why did you try to kill me?
I was trying to save you.
Why did you try to kill me?
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking about that too.
Oh, was that a sleepwalking scene? Or is it just the... Oof, that... I mean, it was already emotionally tough, but that's... Oof. I don't think we've discussed this so far. I don't... Or maybe I'm forgetting. How aware is Art that Poppit is a lesbian?
I think he knows.
He is.
He knows, and I think he
that
takes pleasure in the fact that he's, like, curing her.
Yeah. Isn't that his thing for some guys? Like they want to
very much
quote
a
unquote
thing.
convert someone.
Because with
like,
that...
my dick must be good enough. Fucking...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With that, the substance abuse and the possible sleepwalking, she's probably been institutionalized definitely more than once. We're going to get into it a little bit later, but if there was like a nature equivalent for Christina, nurture, she was probably institutionalized right after.
Yeah.
Which adds this extra layer of trauma to the situation, because I forget what exactly we discussed that he might say to her. Or, how, Art might tell Christina that it's her fault that her mother's gone, or that, pointing out to her that mental illness runs in the family.
What I think he'd tell her is that, your mother wasn't raised right, and, her whole family's a bunch of psychos, and if you end up like them, I'm not going to be nice, I'll just throw you out on the street.
I had a Pepe Sylvia moment when because the scene between Poppit and Blabberta where they're, Blabberta has her crash out over the cleaning supplies, we watch it a lot, because it's a scene that tells us a lot. I noticed that with Blabberta orders her cleaning supply. Blabberta orders her cleaning supplies alphabetically, and Poppit orders them chronologically. That, you guys explained to me that chronologically probably means that, by expiration date, because I didn't know that cleaning products could expire. But to me, still, Blabberta's strategy feels very much like a no-brainer. If you're gonna categorize your cleaning supplies at all, it's neurotic in the first place, but it's a level of neuroticism that makes sense. It's something that's very natural to her, whereas Poppit's feels like it's very rehearsed. It's a strange strategy to take, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I always interpreted chronologically as the order in which she uses them. Maybe she has a certain order she cleans the house.
Yeah, that makes even more sense with the nature of Poppit's whole housewife identity, quote unquote, being more rehearsed. Because with, Blabberta might understand, with this specific mess, this is what's worked in the past, let me just do this. Whereas Poppit, it's if she wants to stay sane, she needs a routine. I didn't realize when I said that the name thing at the start that we hadn't talked about this point yet. Or I think we did yesterday. I think we accidentally talked about it a little earlier, the color stuff.
Jumped forward a bit. But, just to reiterate, Poppit wears a pink dress, so a dark pink floral dress, and that clashes with Art's bright red. And Blabberta also wears a bright red, but, Clay's green cardigan actually complements the red. So Clay and Blabberta, even though they're miserable, they are able to coexist and, be codependent. Art and Poppit, however, are extremely discordant. They don't mesh together at all, and they create a really volatile environment for the household.
With Clay and Blabberta, a lot of people have those moments in the show where people kind of think about a better timeline, in another life, where, because we see that they have times where they're able to get along and laugh with each other and enjoy each other's company for a small moment. But Poppit and Art have never had that. Art probably does try to joke, he's joking around, but it's because he wants someone to, validate the fact he's funny, he has this positive trait. It's not about a mutual feeling with Poppit.
Yeah. Another thing that, from the scene where we saw Blabberta and Poppit looking at the cleaning supplies together, when Blabberta starts screaming, it's only after that Poppit kind of starts to scream along with her, but she doesn't, it's not to that level, but she does kind of mirror her behavior. So from that, I think Poppit, maybe she'll mirror the behaviors of women that she socializes with just to fit in.
I remember Glam made a great point that Blabberta's approach kind of changes based on the man that she's talking to. So I think that that's interesting that Blabberta kind of shifts herself towards like men, and then Poppit does it to women.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like it.
Wow.
Yeah, like Blibberta's kind of like a male-centered, like has like a very male-centric mindset. Like you're supposed to please men.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and Poppit, you know, she has a more feminine-leaning mindset.
Which I think is a good point, because they're both raised in a society where you're supposed to cater towards men, but of course for Blibberta it comes more naturally because she likes those creatures. Which those creatures, where, you know, Poppit, no matter how hard she tries, I think it's a good message that no matter how hard you try, you can't de-queer yourself by assimilating. It's always going to be a part of you.
Yeah.
And, you know, the harder you try, the worse it makes your mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's problems. Exactly.
You said
as seen in Clay's case as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And with Clay, he gets out of the house and goes to the bar, or he sits in his study. But with Art, because it's like a downside to the situation that he's created, because Poppit can't leave the house. So on top of all of the stuff, she's going stir crazy probably. And there's probably coming a point where her mental health borders on the unmanageable, which is, like as we said, he has no problem at that point carting her off to an institution until she quote unquote behaves herself.
You know, I get the feeling she'd like the institution, like secretly, because she can just paint without being disturbed and she gets to wear comfy groovy socks.
Yeah, and it's like we discussed before with the cleaning supplies, how she kind of, I feel like she would thrive with a routine. She would prefer a routine that involves things that she enjoys, but being able to have that sense of consistency, I think, would help a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, like, I feel like an institution in Moral Orel would literally be like just that, like a place where it's like wife daycare where they just cart them off there till they behave themselves and then they come back. Like, I feel like it'd be so satirized. Like, it wouldn't be like, sanitariums are fucking horrible, but like I feel like they would do it in a way where it's like lighthearted, but also like, wow, this is pretty fucked up. Like,
there's
it infantilizes them.
Yeah.
Wes, you've seen F is for Family, right?
Yes.
You remember that there's this, for those who haven't seen it, there's this episode where the wife, Sue, is pregnant, and it takes place in the 70s, and her husband is late for some reason to come pick her up from the hospital, so they put her in this waiting room because, I don't know if this is historically accurate, I assume it is, but the women were not allowed to leave the hospital without being signed out by their husband. And there's this poor woman there's this poor woman in there that makes me think of Poppit. She has a broken arm, and her husband, she calls her, because they're able to call their husbands in there. It's like a prison, you know, like you get your one phone call. And she's sitting there with a broken arm, and her husband is like, yeah, I'm gonna golf for a few more rounds. Hang in there, honey.
Killing him with my mind.
Art would do that.
Also,
Art would definitely golf. Like, let's be real. He would definitely golf.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You were gonna say?
Oh, last point. I think Poppit is a chain smoker.
Yes, I was about to ask, because I know that there's so many things that point to the show taking place in the modern day and not like in the 50s, 60s, but you know, some places still have regulations from that time, like they haven't gotten with the times. I wonder if she would be allowed to smoke at the institution as well.
I mean, if it's anything like Moralton, then probably.
Yeah.
Like, Clay is smoking everywhere he goes. So,
touche. I was Googling because I was curious on the effects that taking benzos and smoking at the same time would have. I didn't get to do that deep of a dive, so there's probably more to it, but what I did learn was that apparently people who take benzos are more likely to smoke cigarettes. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the specific like tobacco and nicotine, or if it's just, you know, it's a easy addictive substance to get your hands on.
I mean, so I would, without doing any research, I would say they're probably associated because the kind of person who is taking benzos really needs to relax, and cigarettes are also have that relaxing, like the nicotine like helps relax you, and I would say that's probably the association between them. It's someone who's really looking for that kind of like comfort through substance.
Yeah.
Benzos are actually used to help people quit smoking, if I recall.
That's wild.
Really. But they're also, like, really addictive, so people have to be careful with them.
Yeah. And, you know, with Poppit smoking so much, her children's clothes, because she's the one doing the laundry, would probably smell like cigarettes, which Block wouldn't really give that much of a fuck about. I don't think it would affect his life very much.
Can I circle back for a second? Yeah, I just wanted to say, did any of you watch the newest season of The White Lotus?
No, why?
So there's a character. She's like a rich mom from North Carolina. And she is like addicted to lorazepam, which is a benzo. And like there's this one line where she's like, well, I don't have my lorazepam, so I'm just gonna have to drink myself to sleep.
Pills are now totally missing.
Well, maybe you didn't bring them. You're always losing things.
They were in my purse. My whole prescription is gone.
Mom, you don't need that stuff.
Oh, I feel trapped, Piper. On a boat I don't want to be on, with a bunch of people I don't want to talk to.
Oh my god!
Oh, like because her husband like took her lorazepam because he's really stressed out, and so like he's secretly taking it. So she's like having a crisis because she doesn't have her lorazepam.
Oh my gosh!
I'm sorry, I was just thinking.
No, that's very Poppit. I said this in the server last night, but I thought the audience might be interested in it as well. If any of you guys have seen the show, Hey Arnold. The character Helga, her mother, also feels very Poppit-esque. Helga is they call it smoothies. She's like a margarita a day, but they don't say there's alcohol in it. But she's very she's constantly hooded lids. She's not really lucid most of the time. Guys who've seen the show might have to correct me on this. I believe she gets
she's married to Big Bob Pataki, and he's really in charge and dominant and masculine. So I always got the sense that she wasn't fulfilled as a housewife or being married to him.
Do we ever see her what is like when she doesn't get to have her smoothie?
Well, it's never explicitly stated that way. We just know that she's really lethargic all the time, and it's really only implied that she's day drinking. But this will come episode where she ends up taking over Bob's business, and she actually thrives there. I don't remember how it ends though.
Yeah, there was two things. There was supposed to be a second thing. We'll go back into Christina, I promise. But there was supposed to be a spin-off that never got aired in the year 2000, where Miriam is Helga's mother's name. Miriam was actually supposed to go in recovery, and she got a job at a radio station. This second thing will be more relevant later, but there is an episode where Helga and her mom go on a road trip, and she gets distracted trying to reach for something on the ground, and she drives them off the road and strands them. And Helga has this big rant where she straight up says to her mom, I'm 9 years old. Have you ever considered that you're a bad mom? Which is crazy for a kid's show, but speaking of...
it's not crazy for Hey Arnold, because they went all out with those kids and their problems.
True.
And Helga had some problems. She basically, imagine if Danielle Stopframe was a little girl.
Yeah, I remember that part of the show. She has a photo of him, and she's always stroking the photo or something.
She has a shrine to him made up.
Yeah, she has a literal effigy. But speaking of another little girl,
Miss Christina Posabule.
Oh my god, Senna, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So, by virtue of being a girl, Christina's not allowed the typical freedoms afforded to boys that are of similar age to her. And she's likely expected to shoulder a lot more of the household burden than, say, Orel would ever have to.
Yeah. We don't see Orel doing chores, really. There's just, this one time where Blabberta asks him to take out the trash, and that's, I feel mostly so we could get the, you'll need trash.
Yeah.
That's kind of hilarious if that's the one time that she's ever asked him, and he was like, fuck you, Blabberta. I love the way he says it.
Yeah, but we don't really ever see him doing chores, I don't think.
And, with Poppit kind of being out of it because of her drug habit, and sometimes just being out of the house because she's in the institution, Christina is probably raising Block a lot at the time. Young girls are very often seen as secondary mothers, especially in evangelical circles. Christina's already a stay-at-home daughter at the age of 12.
And also not just taking care of Block, she might also be fulfilling tasks like making dinner, which would serve Art. Because I
think they're eating a lot of cereal in that house.
Yeah. Like when I say making dinner, she's making cereal and toast.
Not me thinking cereal was code word for something. I was like, what are they making and what is the cereal?
Literally, she's a child. She doesn't know how to use the oven, so she's going to be making cereal.
So, we have to cook
cereal for breakfast, lunch.
Oh my god, shut up.
Maybe at most she's boiling some pasta.
She's probably hurt herself cooking dinner before.
I wonder
that
if
reminds me. Sorry, I used to have a gas stove, and I would like make marshmallows on the gas stove. So I can picture her doing
used to do that.
Oh, she like makes s'mores for Block.
Sometimes I would do something similar, but instead of using a gas stove, I would just use a lighter.
That works too.
Did you ever commit arson? One time I burnt macaroni because I forgot to put water in it, like the little macaroni cup.
Oh,
One time my brother wanted to make pasta, and like he was like, "Will you make it for me?" He was like fully old enough to make it too. He was like in high school, and I was like, "You can make it, like you're fine." And then he's like starts to make it, so he's like pouring the pasta in without any water and like turning on the stove, and I'm like, "No."
Weaponizing
competence. The fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think he knew though. I like really don't think he knew, and it's because no one ever made him do anything.
Oh God.
One last thing before we transition to the next point. One time in the middle of the night, I snuck out of my room because I really wanted French fries, but I had to wake up my parents anyways because I made them on a plastic plate inside of the oven.
No, not the plastic plate.
Yeah, my parents are very kind about it, but that reminds me of with Orel and Clay's, spanking and lectures, there is the lecture part, but Art has less regard and respect towards Christina than Clay has towards Orel, just by virtue of their genders. So it's very likely that he punishes her without even explaining what she did wrong. He thinks that Poppit's going to do that, even though he knows that she doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, oh, like your mother needs to step up because this is her job, and she very rarely does that.
Isn't stepping up to say anything, and Christina's not getting any guidance from Art. Then, like, what's that doing to her? Like, does that
feels very lost?
I think so because she has to. It's like she's in a position where they're making her the parent, and they're not giving her any guidance. So, what else is she supposed to think besides that she has to trust her own judgment?
Yeah. Ergo, things like inviting Orel out to Inspiration Point.
Yeah. I always loved that despite how little we get to see of the family, they planted enough of a seed to make Christina different enough from Orel in such an interesting way.
Yeah. Well, when Poppit is functional enough to give Christina advice, what do we think she's talking about?
It's very like recycled, like conservative, like evangelical almond mom, like talking points. It's like, don't eat too much. Like, you need to make sure your body like is like, the way it needs to look to attract a man when you grow up. Like, make sure you dress modest. Like, I feel like don't be fat is like the most common thing Christina hears.
Definitely, and it's not like sugar coated. Poppit is just straight up saying, "Don't be fat."
Boys will be boys.
Papa definitely eats like crumbs. Like,
yeah,
she's not eating probably.
She probably forgets to eat a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And if she doesn't forget, I feel like she does encourage Christina's hobby in any way. It would be, and her biblical stuff. It would be because she needs a distraction, so she isn't thinking about hunger. Because she's a growing girl. She's going through puberty. If there's any time that she needs to eat, it's now. So she's probably might be a little bit more irritable than Orel in general. I just remembered, there's this thing that like ancient monks used to do to stave off gluttony, where they would put ashes on the bread that they ate so that they wouldn't enjoy it as much and they wouldn't eat as much of it. So I like that sounds a little extreme and silly, but it is a tactic that I've seen people in the modern day with eating disorders use at times, where they ruin their food so they don't finish it.
Yeah.
Which sucks on another level if Christina's the one cooking it a lot of the times.
I mean, I can practically hear Poppit like telling Christina that, men are like, they can't control themselves and you have to be modest and chaste to, help them control themselves.
Yeah. And I feel like she's also just kind of like warns Christina, like, even if you do that, men are going to take what they want. So you just have to deal with that.
So just don't leave the house. So to Art, Christina is like a property that can lose value, that he's responsible for keeping high value.
Yeah, and like that's definitely like a purity thing, but it also makes me think of like the whole like alpha male manosphere thing about like high value men, high value women.
Oh God.
Like it makes me think of that too, which is like ties back into like the same kind of principles. It's like it's all based in that like right wing like Christian.
Art keeps her high value by keeping her a virgin, to be blunt, whereas Poppit helps to keep her high value, quote unquote, by keeping her skinny. So it's like all centered on her body, which goes back to what happened on Inspiration Point, where the fact that she already at that age is associating a look of concern with that there's something wrong with her body. Because Orel didn't mean it like that, but it's how she reacted.
Yeah.
We also think like purity culture is a big thing in Christina's life. Like, we think she probably attended a purity ball with Art and like wears a purity ring, and she probably like made a formal vow to Art that she'll stay pure until marriage, which is like a thing that happens in that culture, and it's really weird.
For those who don't know what a
weird.
purity ball is, like it's legit like a huge prom where dads take their daughters to swear to like be pure until marriage.
That is just the weirdest fucking vibes from that. It's so
weird.
fucking icky and strange.
Yeah.
Didn't Hannah Montana do that?
I don't remember
A lot of the
that. I watched a lot of that show. I don't remember that.
I remember
the
her
Jonas
dad
Brothers had
getting
purity rings as
mad.
well.
Yeah, the
Oh, yeah,
Jonas
they did.
Brothers. Yeah.
And I remember when they stopped wearing their purity rings, that was like a big thing.
I don't think she did, but
Seems
remember
not, but I do
hearing
know that the
stuff about
Jonas
it.
Brothers wore purity rings.
Or Miley Cyrus.
Oh, were you
yeah.
talking about Miley Cyrus? I thought you were saying
Yeah,
there was an
well, I
episode of
can't-
Hannah Montana.
Oh, there
I was
an
like, I
episode
don't
of
remember.
Montana.
Yeah,
I totally went to.
Those are two
I
different
don't remember
women.
the Purity Ball episode of Hannah Montana.
I can't believe you would confuse those two totally different women.
Yeah, why did Hannah Montana steal Jem's gig anyway?
Selena Gomez and Demi Lovato also wore purity rings.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It's like the Disney
and,
people
like-
wanted them to wear them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's like-
gays.
Yeah.
And if like anyone in the audience is like really interested in learning about like purity culture, there's a really good Fundie Fridays video about it. So I recommend checking that out. It's very informative, very interesting.
Yeah, and at these purity balls, it's just a bunch of it's a bunch of little girls and grown men. Speaking of, Christina's likely not allowed to be friends with boys. We'll get into it a little bit later, but we do have an idea for her entirely female friend group.
Yeah. They're just
And of
basically
course-
like parallels to Orel's friend group.
Yeah, it's Doey, Tommy, and Kid 1 in wigs, but anyway. Christina and Orel are very evenly matched when it comes to the Bible stuff. I think, in her town, she has a similar role to him of being very knowledgeable and religiously scrupulous and being up in everybody's butt cheeks about it. Which, when Orel does it, he's a little troublemaker and he's very cute, but it's different for Christina, I believe.
It would be a double standard where, they wouldn't consider her to be cute when she's doing that. They would consider her to be like bossy and unlikable.
Yeah, like Orel's the town darling, even though he causes all this trouble. But I think Christina would just be seen as like a burden, like troublemaker. She's pushy and bossy and not someone people like to be around.
Because they expect the girls as much as the boys to really take in the religious upbringing and the values, but at the same time, they're not supposed to have any values other than what their husband or their father tells them. And on top of that, she's pushing her values onto others, even though you would think that that's the values of the entire town. So she would be incredibly confused. And, when Orel and Clay call her a tiny little female Christ, it's cute and it's in it positively. I think Clay is very happy for Orel and Christina to be introduced to each other at first. But if people either where they come from or where they live now called Christina a tiny little female Christ, I think it would be insulting and sarcastic, coming from the townsfolk who are fed up with her. Like, oh, if it isn't the tiny little female Christ getting me when I get mogged in my faith and works by a little girl.
So Art, as like a parent, likely prevents Christina from developing a sense of autonomy and security. So he would do things like take her bedroom door off its hinges, look through her backpack, checking her outfits before she leaves the house, and like if she has a phone, he would go through it.
Gosh, yeah, he totally would. The door thing is like so what's the word? Divisive.
It's invasive.
Yeah, invasive. And the reason I said divisive was because I see it a lot, even to this day, people doing it to their kids. Like, oh, it's how I stop my kids from slamming doors, which, Christina's probably doing because she's low-key starving. So she's irritable, But it's not even... So it's about multiple layers of control. But another reason I find it interesting is because with her feelings about her body and probably want to hide it, she can't even get dressed without fearing that somebody's going to be seeing it.
Yeah. Or she gets dressed in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't get to have any kind of privacy, or she doesn't get that privacy because in Art's mind, like she's like his property.
Yeah, and even if she does like change in the bathroom and stuff,
have that.
She probably isn't allowed to lock doors.
So when I was younger, I got this book, and I think it's like a staple in a lot of girls' childhoods.
Dude, I had that too, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't think it was particularly helpful for me, but at the same time, I also was a huge Googler, and like I was raised by a single dad, so he didn't like he was just like, this is what's happening, man. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This is what's happening. Oh my God. I guess I had a little bit more context than some girls who are often given the book might have.
I'd never seen this shit in my life.
Yeah,
I had it, but I had like the original version. This is a new cover.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Because if they didn't have any sort of youth speaker at church, the Christian version of this book that Christina gets is probably where she's told, or she reads the thing about the flower or the toothpaste.
Yeah.
They're not giving girls in Moralton or wherever Christina's from the care and keeping of
They do. These books did exist like in the 50s and 60s, but they would have been like a lot more, I don't know,
weird.
I feel like I've seen them before.
I've read a few from one, and there's also an old cartoon about periods where they were kind of personified between the ladylike rationality and the monster that being on your period turns you into, apparently.
Oh my lord.
Yeah, I might be confabulating, is that the right word? I might be confabulating two different cartoons together, but they did address the subject back in that time. And I remember explicitly at one point in the period cartoon, it was talking about how you shouldn't use it as an excuse to, like, relax a little bit, but don't use it as an excuse for everything.
Won't you stop feeling sorry for yourself and take those days in your stride? You'll find it's easier to keep smiling and even-tempered. You can do practically everything you normally do.
I think Disney made that one about where it's like, oh yeah, just don't use it as an excuse. Like, you can still get up and do stuff and put on your makeup.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
Yes, exactly like that. You're going to grow up and you're going to like it, Christina.
So we raised the idea that Christina might play tuba, and I kind of had this idea that she's part of a brass group that's called the Seven Trumpets, based on the Book of Revelations. And it's just like kind of like a little like fun in-universe world building thing where Christina has this outlet to put her frustrations into like her instrument, like all these cultivating feelings about her father, her mother, like she can just play as loud as she wants to.
Also, besides the biblical reference in the name, I think it is such a moral oral joke that a band would be called Seven Trumpets, and they're not all trumpets.
Yeah.
It's like the no hammer joke. Where are the other 6 trumpets?
That's funny. There's 6 trumpets.
All right, so moving on to Block. So something stuck out to me about Block is that his name is very like there's something masculine about his name. It's very like hard and sturdy. It's just like a one syllable Block. And then Shapey has a very like soft name. It's like it feels like a little bit more feminine. Like you could imagine like if he was a girl, he like could still have that same name.
Yeah, I think he could still be named Shapey.
Yeah, there's just like something a lot more feminine about that. And so we think that it's like we pretty much know that Blabberta named Shapey. Like no way is Clay gonna do that. But we think that kind of confirms that Art was the one to name Block.
Something that I just realized with Block being Art's quote-unquote heir, Block almost reminds me of like a building block. Like Christina's chopped liver, Block is the real foundation of the next generation to Art.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting because with naming your child Christina, you assume that that's a hope for your daughter to go out and be Christ-like. But like with most things with Art, it's superficial.
Yeah, we also had some like observations about Block's appearance. Like his face shape is a lot more similar to Art's, and like we'll put some pictures up on the screen so you know you can reference it as you listen. But he has like a longer face shape like Art does. He has like a different eyes and hair, but his nose is the same, like points in the same direction and has the same shape. There's like a resemblance there that Block does not have to Poppit, which we think supports that is Art's son and not Poppit's.
I gotta look at a picture real quick. I think I might be bullshitting here, but I believe that Block also has more of like takes up a smaller amount of space on his head. Like his hairline is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's his head's longer, right?
He's got the A. Puppington curse of inheriting his father's receding hairline as a child.
I mean, his eyes and his hair, his eyes don't match Art's eyes, so you can presume that the eyes are from his mom.
Yeah. But why does his shapey look like Roberta at all? Stupid stop frame jeans.
And not be stopped. Too powerful.
What was Wes saying? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Block's nose, it points down in the same direction like Art's nose. Oh, and this other point is one that I thought of because of the arrangement of the cleaning supplies thing, which has nothing to do with it, but I just thought would be kind of funny.
Yeah.
So because Roberta arranges her cleaning supplies in alphabetical order, I think that Shapey is dyslexic. And because Poppit arranges hers in chronological order, I think that Block, he can't count. He has dyscalculia.
That means that as an adult,
I love it.
Dear viewers, Shapey is a cop that can't read, and Block is a firefighter that can't count.
He learns how to read.
I know, I'm joking.
He's just
okay. It's not like that. People who have dyslexia, they can learn to read. It's just
of course
harder and it takes longer.
Yeah.
Please, audience. I know. I was joking.
It does affect your ability to string together words and sentences. So that could also factor into why Shapey had like a delayed, ability to speak.
Oh, that is really interesting. What I was gonna say is that it puts the "When I'm Lonely" scene in a whole new light because he gave his communication with Roberta scene his all, and I'm curious of what an equivalent of Block might be like. It probably wouldn't be with Poppit or Art. It'd probably be Christina.
Yeah. I mean, another thing about dyscalculia is that, it's not just about being able to count, but being able to tell time, being able to, remember sequences of numbers, dates, and so he's going to be late to things all the time.
I have an idea. Sorry, it just dawned on me. With Block's When I'm Lonely moment, maybe there's an episode, like hypothetically, there would be an episode where Art and Poppit, because, they forget her birthday, and this is like closer to, the end of the whole thing. And Block is the only one that remembers because of the whole thing with dyscalculia and dates and things like that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he'd be able to do that. Almost like, yeah.
Well, and he wouldn't be able to do anything about it, but he could remember the date in this, special event.
He would have had to practice it.
Yeah, which is just like Shapey because Shapey probably had to practice saying that before he was able to say it to Roberta.
Yeah.
But speaking of that scene, we've mentioned it a little bit before, but to go more in depth with it, Block doesn't really seem to feel the connection with Poppit that Shapey has with Roberta. I mean, Block even prefers Roberta to Poppit and Poppit probably never breastfed him because, he wasn't her baby, so she wouldn't. The biological process is necessary for that to happen. She wouldn't be lactating, which, of course, as we've discussed before, can have a big effect on a child's development and connection.
For more on that, watch our Shapey video.
And another thing we thought was because of, Block being the favorite child by Art, likely that, he has a more cohesive room. Maybe he has a lot of toys. Maybe Art is overcompensating and just buying him whatever he wants because he's the kid that's going to be, he's a man. He's going to be the next little man of the house. So that's why he's still misbehaved, but he's just spoiled in a different way, where it's he's spoiled physically instead of being spoiled with, physically is not the right word. Monetarily instead of with
materially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Block's being spoiled in that way, but he's not getting that emotional fulfillment that's helping him develop in a normal way.
Yeah, because
the other thing is that Art would never want Block playing with any of Christina's toys.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
He's probably hurting himself still, but
to them if she have to lock them up.
Oh man, yeah, because even if Art says no, he probably
runs around the house anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And Block is probably still hurting himself, not from ordinary everyday, maybe also like cleaning supplies and stuff like that, but also with the like hyper masculine toys that maybe is not age appropriate for him that Art has got as just a symbol of man.
Nearly real ammo.
Yeah, exactly.
Block shot himself with the BB gun.
And even if Art does put money into socializing Block as masculine, he's not, like we said, he's not giving him any kind of real attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd rather put all that energy into his workplace.
Yeah. Yep. This last line is something we said already in Christina's part.
Yeah.
Want to go? Yeah.
I mean, it's worth reiterating. He feels closest to Christina because she's put in charge of him so often.
Yep. That's why, like, his
really pay attention to him, and Poppit just doesn't like him at all.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because, yeah, Orel doesn't really, like, Orel can be very, like, nice with Shapey at times, but it does seem like Orel gets fed up with him and just kind of, like, doesn't, you know, fuck with him sometimes. Like, he'll leave him on his own sometimes, but not to say he's a bad brother or anything,
no,
but
he's
you know what
12.
I mean. You know, he can be a little fed up with his little crazy little bro, but
in like Best Christmas Ever, it's like the implication is that like Orel thinks Shapey is not so nice.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, he's constantly saying that Shapey's bad.
Not only is Shapey bad, but that means that he's good.
Yeah. Oh, wait, what?
It's sweet because even though Orel's
something that like some siblings will internalize, where it's like, oh, I'm the good sibling.
Oh, yeah.
You're the bad one. So,
Yeah.
I have to teach you how to be better. And, you know, if you're not better, well, whatever, because I'm still the good sibling.
Yeah.
And it's sweet because even with that in mind, you know, Orel does try to take care of him. Like, maybe it's because he thought he was Jesus, but, you know, he makes sure he gets coat on when he goes outside.
When he goes, what about him? He's always bad. I can feel the little smile on his face. Like, anyway. So there were a couple ideas that were kind of shuffled around in about like what the name of the Posabules like town could be. That they was this one they were from or the one that they moved back to or moved to afterwards.
Well, I kind of got the sense that they were from the town and then they moved back to the town.
I see. Okay,
That makes sense. What's your guys' favorites from the list?
Okay,
so let's read through them first.
Okay,
Yeah.
Goodberg,
Virtueberg,
Blessington. That one sounds too British. Too many Europeans there. That's why they left.
Blessville.
God,
say more time.
Condescending Heights.
Condescending Heights.
That one's my
Condescending
favorite.
Heights, but Condescending Heights to me sounds more like a community. Like Condescending Heights, like could be like the neighborhood they live in.
Yeah.
Heights is usually more of like an urban thing than a suburban thing.
Okay, so I like Condescending Heights best because, like, I was reading a bit about, you know, the differences between, you know, their different versions of the Lord's Prayer and who uses what. So to talk a bit about their beliefs, well, first we want to mention that, you know, because Moral Orel is a work of satirical fiction, it doesn't specify which Protestant Christian denomination that, you know, their church, God's favorite church is. The joke being that, you know, your church happens to be God's favorite. But, you know, we're going to make some guesses based on the context clues that we get. You know, since the location of State of Soda is half in Kansas and half in Missouri. Now, Davy and Goliath, which is the show that the aesthetic of Moral Orel was based on, was funded by the Lutheran Church, which we know, like, Lutheran Christianity was, you know, started by Martin Luther. And they have a Martin Luther Hospital in Moralton, which would have been named after that guy, the originator of the Protestant Reformation. We can assume that God's favorite church is a Lutheran offshoot or something similar. If we want to take it somewhere more specific, the Lutheran Church in Missouri has its own offshoot called the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And that is an Orthodox traditional confessional Lutheran denomination. And it is the second largest Lutheran body in the USA. And they use the Trespasses version of the Lord's Prayer. Now, the Posabules, however, they use the Debtors version. The Debtors version of the Lord's Prayer is used by Presbyterians and Reformed churches. We're going to assume that the Posabules are Presbyterians. So the main difference between Lutheran Protestantism and Presbyterianism, and like, it's ingrained in the idea of who's to be saved. Lutherans and evangelicals, they believe that Jesus died for all of mankind's salvation. So Jesus died for you. You should convert to Christianity so that you can repent and join him in the kingdom of heaven. And Presbyterians, who, they're Calvinists, they believe that Lutherans and general Protestants, that they're okay with something called the paradox. So the paradox is that Protestant Christians and evangelicals, they believe in free will, that everybody in the world has the ability to achieve salvation by converting to Christianity and basically, worshiping God and repenting. Calvinists, they don't believe that. Presbyterians are Calvinists. They believe in predestination. They believe that God only wants certain people to be saved. And Jesus died to save those people specifically. So, even if you were to convert, if you weren't in God's plan to be saved, then you're not going to be saved. The whole ethic of the evangelical church is the opposite of that. They want to save as many people as possible. So then they try to push it on you as hard as possible.
I feel like a Calvinist denomination is, both are bad for women, but I feel like a doctrine that tells you that it would push even harder into the predetermined general thing. Because it's like God's plan is there's no miracles, coincidences are not happening. Your entire life is pre-planned. And I think it also makes more sense for Christina to be the... Not that it's impossible for someone in Orel's situation, obviously, but I think with that kind of logic, it does make more... I can see why Christina would go through a faith deconstruction first.
Yeah.
So, as we explained before, the Danielle Analogue and our view is named Jolene because of the Dolly Parton song, where there's this woman that comes in and, Poppit doesn't really give a shit about a woman seducing art, but it's what happens. So the Danielle Analogue in the situation is a woman who seduces art in order to provide the family with a son, who becomes the link to her introduction and insertion into the family structure, just as Danielle did with Shapey. And, due to the scandalous nature of her pregnancy, because everyone in town can see that, just Papa wasn't pregnant, and they're probably not very aware of conditions that might make a pregnant woman not show. They cover it up by claiming her to be a surrogate. And surrogacy actually isn't forbidden in the Christian religion. It has precedence in the Bible, but there are a lot of different opinions and different denominations. I mean, we see that they argue over something as little as one word in a prayer. While the Puppingtons and Moralton in general will probably have a problem with something of that sort because it disrupts the family, the Posabules in their own community may say it differently because it fulfills the obligation to be fruitful and multiply.
So, ergo, after Block is born, the Posabules adopt him officially and claim him as their own.
Yep.
Hence, our boy Block. Yeah. Now, this hypothetical woman did this to get closer to Poppit and have an affair with her. She introduced herself through a letter similar to Danielle's, in which she claims she didn't know that Art was married and that her and Poppit are both the victim in the situation.
Ooh.
Gaslight gate.
Carol Boss.
As opposed to Danielle and Clay, who never consummated their relationship, Poppit and Mystery Woman had a long and passionate affair that usually took place while Art was at work and Christina was at school. And it's more physical than it is emotional, especially for Poppit.
It's very interesting that, because they would be around each other for such longer stretches of time than Danielle and Clay get to be, especially with how we had canon that Art actually does go and shoot some of those animals that he would have in his study. And I think because it helps with this, what I'm about to say, that they are together so much, because I would believe that Mystery Woman is also likely dangerously attached to Poppit, which is probably the reason that they moved out of the town.
They have that codependent sapphic 48-hour date.
Oh my gosh.
You ever heard of one of those?
Yeah. Jolene made a copy of their house key.
God. This might have been the reason that the Posabules needed to move to a new town.
Which is interesting because if we believe that they moved back, then something had to have happened there that she's not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
And, to mirror Danielle's position as a gym coach, Mystery Woman probably has a job that involves contact with children. And we have, ideas, a few different Mystery Woman concepts, if anyone wants to go first.
So she could be, a pediatrician, a family dentist. She could be a teacher, a firefighter, a softball coach, an English teacher. Those are just some ideas.
And we're going to put pictures on the screen of some of our different concepts. Well, I'll go first. So my Jolene concept, it's very bare bones, but I went with the English teacher because the idea for being pregnant with Block, it made me laugh because of the whole trope that English teachers are always pregnant, they're always about to go on maternity leave.
Okay, my favorite is her being a family dentist because, like, in comparison to Danielle being a gym coach who's constantly around balls. So, she's good with tools and orifices as a dentist, but putting her hands in there.
I also like the dentist idea. I think it gives her kind of access to the whole family. And then, yeah, that's probably my favorite. But then, like, I think softball coach is funny just for, like, the stereotype of it all.
Yeah. Okay, so Sen and I were kind of brainstorming about Jolene as either a dance teacher or a firefighter, and what these ideas both share is that they both require your body to be in a specific physical condition. Either as a ballet teacher in specific, you have to be very skinny. You don't have to be skinny to be a ballerina, of course, but society at large believes that you do. And with a firefighter, you physically can't go into a building and save people and from a fire if you're 9 months pregnant. So in either of those scenarios, she feels as though Poppit owes her a relationship because she's either sacrificing her body or she's sacrificing this time off work. And with the firefighter idea in specific, we believe that she likes to start fires so that she can save people from them and appear to be a hero.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she's like, on top of feeling like Poppit owes her a relationship, she now has extra emotional needs that aren't being fulfilled that she's trying to get Poppit to give her.
Oh my god. I actually love the starting fires so you can save people from them idea.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, that stuff's really psychologically crazy.
If we go with that one, the house that they move back into, and just using Condescending Heights just so that we have a term, the house that they move back into in Condescending Heights probably is not their original house, if you get where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
This crazy lesbian set my house on fire, Poppit. Worst of all, I thought she loved me.
Right.
Oh my god.
Christina's friend group.
So, I'm so excited about this. Christina's friend group is a direct parallel of Orel's own. She has a best friend whose inner life Christina doesn't fully understand, a brainiac who Christina pities for her quote-unquote self-imposed struggles, and a girl who just stands there. So, first we have Downy, which her name refers to when you stuff a pillow or a doll with soft feathers. She occupies the role of Dowie, of course. She's sometimes the anxiety-filled voice of reason, and other times eggs on Christina's schemes. Like Kim and Carl, Downey's parents are also somewhat stuck in their youth, as they forever consider themselves first-time parents, no matter how old their daughter gets. Unlike Dowie, Downey's loved a little too much, so she's only allowed out with Christina because I've decided to name her parents Kyle and Kate Cossiter, which I'll explain in a second. They think Christina is responsible, albeit annoying, like the rest of the town. Cossiter was chosen because to be cosseted means to be cared for and protected in an overindulgent way, to be pampered. And because I felt like it also went with her first name because, like, she's cushioned. She doesn't get to hurt herself or be rough and tumble like other kids do. And then there's Hannah. I know everyone in the comments is going to be, Tammy, I know. I didn't want to give her the same first letter name because Orel and Christina don't have that. O and C are, I think it's like 12 or 13 letters apart in the alphabet, and so are H and T. So Hannah occupies the role of Tommy. She's, incredibly precocious, and she's the menace of her school's biblical science class. With her, things never go as far as being placed in the special education program. Instead, women in her life, including unprompted comments from older women who are wholly unrelated to her, constantly try to train her intelligence out of her. We talked about Poppit having the Fundie baby voice, so I think that Hannah's voice would have like a kind of artificial whispery affect to it when she's in front of adults, but this of course changes when she's around her friends. And then there's Girl 1. She's a girl, and she stands there.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to say about the little friend group, or are they mostly just kind of like, is that it?
That's all I thought, but if you guys have any thoughts about it, I think we just don't think about Dowie enough to really come up with something. I'm sure the people in the comments will have ideas.
Yeah, definitely something that we'd want to hear if you guys have any kinds of opinions on any of these subjects that we bring up, any of your own headcanons about all this stuff. We'd love to hear it.
Our next section is about Christina and Stephanie Analogue, the mailman, and this is spelled M-A-L-E, so the is the mailman spelled M-A-I-L.
Yeah, and we have 2 main interpretations for this. But, everybody is free to have their own interpretation as well, of course.
Wes, you and I kind of did this first part.
Okay, so the mailman is the mailman. So as a Stephanie Analogue, this character cannot be someone that Christina seeks out since her ability to go out and be adventurous is severely limited, but it has to be someone who can easily come to her. The mailman comes regularly, converses with her, and offers her some much-needed reason and rationality. Now, in contrast to Stephanie, the mailman is a gay man who, in Christina's mind, would make a great dad, much to his chagrin. Perhaps he is always at the club, whether that is the leather club or the country club. His aesthetic is when you have mail to deliver at 4, but you have to be at the club at 5. A sort of Freddie Mercury type or a Tom of Finland type. Oversexed, but ultimately harmless and very much just a guy. Like how Stephanie looks all edgy and scary, but she's very nice when you get to know her. The mailman delivers Orel's letters directly to Christina so her father cannot intercept them.
Real quick, I had a stupid thought. With how Stephanie gives Orel a piercing, I feel like there would be this cute runoff joke where like Christina doesn't really understand the concept, so she's like, when I grow up, I want to grow a cool mustache like yours. And he gets her this cute little novelty mustache.
So I had this idea of Christina and the mailman on their first meeting. So I imagine it happens. The mailman's outside delivering the mail, and Art tells Christina to go get it because he has things to do. He's busy. So he's like, you go get the mail. So Christina runs outside to get it. And Christina, she's sad. She feels ignored. She just wants to tell her dad about her day, but he's too busy. So when she runs outside to get the mail from the mailman, she's like trying to like have a conversation with him, and she's like, do you want to hear about my day? And the mailman is like, who is this child? But he's like very struck by how sad she is, so he just kind of like lets her talk at him about how her day was, even though he like legitimately has places he needs to be. Like he's got the rest of his mail route.
That's so cute.
So he's got to go. But he's like, damn, this is a sad child. So he stays and listens to her. And after that, he makes an effort to talk to her every time he delivers the mail.
What's his name?
His name is George Geo T-Nut.
T-Nut. Do you want to explain what that?
It's a thing that you put into the foot of a stop motion character so that when you've got them walking across a surface, you can bolt each foot to the surface using it.
That's a really fun tidbit too for the audience. Make your own stop motion puppets, guys. It's fun.
And that's really interesting because he's so grounded.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's another extra little kind of meaning for it.
Yeah. And George was chosen just because it's a very like every guy name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, Geo sounds like a Leatherman's name.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's like a sturdy. It's like a mineral name. Yeah,
it sounds European.
Yeah, tell us about your mailman.
Okay, so in terms of like the overall framework, the mailman shares the whole mailman thing in both things. So a lot of things that were said in the first part about his job, how he comes about Christina, that kind of feels the same way in the way that I imagine it as well. But my take on the mailman is that because I see Stephanie as like, she's very open about how she's different and everything. And she's a gender nonconforming lesbian. She has a bit more edge to her. She sticks out in Moralton like a sore thumb. Whereas I think that the mailman would be a quote unquote palatable, sanitized gay, that it's like easy for everybody in the town to be comfortable around. And they don't know that he's gay. Whereas with Stephanie, it's more so like, oh, that's pretty well known based on what the town seems to think of her. So I think that they just go, oh, that guy, he's just a little bit, he's a little exotic.
He's a bachelor.
He dresses for attention. So, he's a mailman during the week, but I think that during the weekend he goes out of town and he does some drag gigs because he's also a drag queen. And he's a member of the boating club, which means he's a very experienced seaman. He loves a good docking. He's really good with his hands. He's very efficient in tying all kinds of knots. He could do it blindfolded, backwards, that whole 9 yards. My name for him is Gel Cellophane because I went with the boating angle for him, and that's like a big theming thing for him. I wanted the name to be like based around like water stop motion techniques. So like they tend to use like stuff like hair gel or like cut up cellophane plastic, stuff like that. Just
Before
go ahead.
Before we move on, because this is in the notes, his drag name that we chose is Nautica Buoy Toy.
Yeah, not
like boy toy.
Yeah, you just say boy with like a little bit of an accent, like a buoy.
Buoy toy.
Yeah, and Miss Nautica Boy Toy is a camp queen. She's very committed to her bit. Boating is her passion, and she's gonna let you know. I imagine her being very pinup, like sailor style looking outfits. But she's got a good range. She's very fun. I think that an interesting thing about the Dragon Girl, so my version, so Jelly, he does want to be a dad as a subversion to Stephanie, but because of his drag persona and, like he's very into like the feminine and, he's also a man, so he knows what growing up like a man was like, he is able to be a good, positive, like male figure in Christina's life, separate from Art, but also is able to feel like give her more like realistic mother, like female values as well.
I really like that.
And my running joke is that everybody in town thinks that him and Nautica are married, and because he just kind of they don't ever see them together, but they just know that he never corrected them. So that's just because they go into the same house, they think that they're married, and that basically his drag persona is his beard.
And like he can use her as an excuse to get out of stuff. Like he can't tell his boating buddies, "Oh, I can't go to that race with you. I have a show. I have a gig." He's like, "Oh, my wife is making this splendid seafood boil tonight."
I like how
I love spice.
Committed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it with mine. He's a fun guy. Now he's out in the world. We can do what we'd like with both of them.
Right. And now we get to the grimdark creepypasta theories on the nurture incident.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the theory I came up with for the nurture incident is that...
Just to clarify again, the nurture incident is a formatively traumatic incident that destabilizes the Posabule home and forces Christina to reevaluate her relationships with her parents and how she was raised. It's basically what happened to Orel, but what happened to Christina.
And if you guys don't get it, it's nature versus nurture.
Yeah. Duh.
Right. So the theory I came up with for the nurture incident is that it is a murder-suicide attempt. I think that Poppit tries to kill both herself and Christina, and I think Poppit tries to kill both herself and Christina in an attempt to save them, quote unquote, from Art's abuse. I think it's likely this is done through like carbon monoxide poisoning, maybe like poison food or drink, but I'm tending more towards like carbon monoxide. Poppit tries to justify like a suicide pact to Christina. She's like, this is something that's good for both of us. We need to do this. But Christina is terrified and does not want to agree to a suicide pact. And so she, tries to stop her. But, she does end up being hurt by it, like physically and mentally. She does eventually, get to safety. But so the incident it's driven by Poppit's love for Christina, which she has an inability to show in a safe or healthy way. Because I think, with it being very clear that Clay loves Orel, but he's not equipped to show it in a healthy way, especially as his alcoholism gets worse. I think it's likely that, this is Poppit's super fucked up way of being like, I love you and I want you to be safe. So this is how we can do that. So the incident would end with Christina, being in the hospital. Carbon monoxide can cause like long-term difficulties with memory and cognition. It can also cause some musculoskeletal issues, or maybe it's like a nervous system type thing. I can't remember exactly, but it can cause like some in some cases it can cause some symptoms similar to like Parkinson's. So I think that Christina might have some long-term issues with that, and it would affect her ability to things that she enjoys. So like, playing the tuba, spending time with her friends, like it would really, drag her down for quite a long time. So that's my theory.
All right. So theory number 2, attempted strangulation under the influence of drugs. So in this idea, it has a psychotic break from an overdose of amphetamines and strangles Christina. Art arrives in time to separate the two of them. So Poppit maybe was not trying to harm her daughter. She may have been hallucinating somebody else in her place. She might have been hallucinating Art or a family member or even her ex-affair partner, the mysterious Jolene. And this incident, while it does not produce a physical scar, takes a mental toll on Christina and traumatizes her for life. Who wants to read theory 3?
So theory 3 is Poppit harms herself in front of Christina. So Christina walks in on Poppit in the kitchen. Poppit may have been cutting herself, harming herself in some way. That's scary. That's really traumatizing. Christina decides to call an ambulance. Now, I came up with this thing where Poppit gets angry at her for calling the ambulance because it costs money, and then insists her to drive to the hospital, Christina to drive to the hospital, a la Beatrice and Honey Sugarman from BoJack. So we have this like little girl dragging her mom to her dad's car, getting into the driver's seat and driving to the hospital. Like, this is her first time ever driving, and it's like nerve-wracking. Like, your mom is dying in the back seat and you're like, oh my gosh, is she going to survive this or not? So Christina is traumatized and obsesses over preventing her mother from doing something like that again.
All right. So theory number 4 is that Poppit scalds Christina by accident with like something boiling on the stove. It's kind of like, I have no experience with this besides knowing that the kid looks like Zuko, but like the kid Todoroki in My Hero Academia.
Really quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so when this theory came up, I couldn't help but kind of laugh a bit because I was like, this is just like in My Hero Academia. So basically there's this character, Shoto Todoroki, and he's like from this family where the mom is super beaten down, she's not mentally well, and the dad is like insanely abusive because because basically the whole thing is like he's like a super well-known hero or whatever, and he wants one of his kids to be in his image and like take over for him one day or whatever.
I can't take it anymore. Every day, the children seem more like him. And Shoto, a child's left side sometimes looks unbearable to me. I can't raise him anymore. I want to run away from this life. Mom, what are you saying?
Moronic woman, to hurt you at such an important time.
Where did Mama go?
Huh? Oh, she hurt my masterpiece, so I put her in a hospital to keep you safe.
So because the dad is super abusive towards the mom, she kind of like snaps one day and she sees her son there, and she just kind of like sees her husband and, you know, kind of freaks out, and she like throws boiling water at him, and it like scalds part of his face, and that's why he has a scar in the show. And anyway, I was like, oh, this is just like that. So she actually gets institutionalized after that.
Yeah. So in that situation, Christina loses the use of her dominant hand because of this, and then she has to relearn things like writing, coordination, playing the tuba, etc., the day-to-day, you know, physical therapy. And then in all of these scenarios, we deduce that Poppit would end up institutionalized at the end.
Yeah.
I don't want to get all grimdark, but I had also considered that potentially this would be like a finality thing, where like this would be like the last straw for Art, and he would be like, I feel like he doesn't care about the state of Poppit because, you know, to him, she's just like his property, his wife, that, you know, he probably barely considers her even like having any agency at all. So I hate to sound super like this sounds like really edgy, but like, I just feel like he would be like, okay, this is the last straw. You're getting lobotomized. I just feel like he wouldn't care. Like, you know, he could still do whatever he wants with her, like if she's quiet and doesn't disturb anybody anymore. But I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's at least definitely likely that she's institutionalized for life.
That too. Yeah, I could see that as well. But then I guess she would kind of be like a little happier because, you know, she likes it there at least.
But that would be extremely scarring for Christina.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in any case, I feel like Art finds a way to make himself seem like the good parent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, he could definitely position himself as like a protector, and it's like, oh, your mother like tried to hurt you or tried to, you know, traumatize you in this way, but I would never do that to you. And in some of these situations, he's the one saving her.
And I'm a rational man, and you can trust me.
Explodes him with my mind. Group chat, meet up at the office. We're jumping our Posabule today.
Nice. So to go over some of the awesome comments we've been getting for a while now, we've gotten a lot of people speculating about the Posabules, and we posted a discussion question asking you guys what you'd be interested in seeing about the Posabules. So one idea from Soul4 is that, it reads, also, I've always imagined that Clay has taxidermy in his study, Poppit is an avid seamstress and has dollhouses in her study, like a metaphor to the preservation of appearances.
I like that a lot.
Tara1692 replies, maybe Christina makes little religious comics to mirror Orel's stop motion work. And that made me think of like chick tracts. Have you guys ever seen one of those?
No, what is that?
Like a chick tract. Jack Chick drew all of these religious comics that they get distributed guerrilla style. So another headcanon from Pilk Milk Pepsi reads, personally, I headcanon that Art dissociates as much as Blurberta. I noticed in the scene where Poppit asked to see Blurberta's detergents, Clay's actually paying attention while Art zones out. For him, the equivalent of cleaning might be listening to good music for hours. Kathleen Morrison says, an analysis on how evangelicalism means Art Posabule protects Christina from Orel. He pulls her inside when they first move in, assumedly because there's been no formal introduction and he doesn't know if the Puppingtons are good people yet. He also tells her to stop trespassing, and he's the one to shut the door to Orel and Closeface, indicating he takes the role of protecting his daughter's purity seriously despite ostensibly neglecting her the way that Clay does Orel. We see it that way too. So Babadex says, I have a theory on why Christina couldn't go and get Block back from the Puppingtons after her mother let him just go live with them. It's because she got grounded after sneaking out to go to the arm's length dance with Orel. And the reason why Orel can't go and bring Block back, too, is because the first time he tried to do it, Block ran off. So there's something going on in that household.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think it's likely.
Yeah.
Like
Definitely.
if we consider that Art's like super overprotective, then
yeah,
I could see it.
Medicinal Madam says Poppit has a similar fondness for cleaning and cleaning supplies as Blurberta. I find that interesting since the way you all interpret her character is that she's potentially more apathetic or uncaring to her situation than Blobs. What do you think makes this particular interest of hers save for her societal expectations to be a homemaker? Blurberta goes apeshit when her cleaning supplies are misorganized, but Poppit seems to keep it together enough to fix the situation, so she's clearly in control. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think we addressed something similar to this. Like what we'd said, she kind of like mirrors the actions because, you know, she's okay for a moment, but maybe she just doesn't know how to react because she doesn't have feelings like this. You know, she's more dulled, she's more dulled down, you know?
She doesn't care as much about cleaning.
Well, I don't even think that's what... Okay, yeah, for Blurberta, that was like everything in her fucking world like broke. But for Poppit, like she doesn't, you know, she doesn't have that kind of... That's not her world. Like her world is something different that we are not exposed to in that episode.
Yeah.
And then like when it come to her going crazy after, you know, that's just kind of like, oh, she's like, oh, maybe this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. And then I guess she just kind of, I don't know, when she switches it back, I don't know. She just wasn't fully committed to the bit, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not wording myself well, but...
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of a bit to her.
Yeah.
Okay. From the Chandra Raj 12. Theory, I feel like Christina Posabule probably did most of the emotional caregiving for Block and Shapey. In fundamentalist homes, it's super common to start raising girls, even very young ones, to be little mothers. They're often taught and expected to do the type of housework the mother would, cleaning, cooking, and looking after younger siblings. So I feel like while Orel, who is nice and mostly responsible older brother, can still get away with doing his own thing, Christina has more expectations to look after her little brother because that's what you do as a girl, and also because the parents are so checked out. Yeah, we went over that a bit in our video, and we totally agree with you. So one more comment from Pilk Milk. My headcanon for Art's gay haircut and wine drinking is that he thinks it makes him more cultured or something. He thinks he has good taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that he's more definitively confident in his masculinity, so he doesn't have to overcompensate by seeming hypermasculine. So that concludes our little speculative video about what we think is going on in the Posabule home. What do you think is going on in there, audience? Let us know in the comments.
Like, what kind of fucked up shit do you think is happening?